Athens Planning Commission. Everyone should have the agenda in front of them. Looking up and down the dais, I see that we do have a quorum, so we are able to take up any cases or communications today. I noticed that we have several people in the audience who are here with us today in council chambers. If you are planning to present to the Planning Commission, if you would just raise your right hand and then signify by saying yes or aye, whatever. Do you swear that you will be honest and truthful to the Planning Commission? Wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for being here. We have disposition of the September 1st, 2022 minutes. Everyone has a copy of those minutes. The commissioners all have a copy.
I move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any communications or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of adopting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The minutes have been adopted. Cases. We have one case before us, and I'm going to turn it over to the Code Director, David Riggs, and this is case number 22-05, proposed changes to code.
Thanks, Mayor. Members of Planning Commission, this was a learning experience for me. So I did a lot of research, and I tried to get a system that for in our codified ordinance that would make it easy and accessible to have renewable energy in the city. Try to streamline the review and approval process, and this is my shot at it, so I appreciate your patience with it. We broke this into two types of renewable energy systems. One would be as accessory structures, so if you have a lot with an existing use on it, if residential or business, you could have an accessory structure that would allow several different types of renewable energy systems as an accessory use to those primary structures. And then the second piece to this, which is going to be 230312, where the renewable energy system is the primary use on a lot or site. So I've got a lot of updates in here. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or comments. I'll be happy to try to answer.
I'm going to start with a comment because I feel like I have of late been on this really interesting press junket conference tour discussing the city's carbon fee, which was adopted in 2018, to where 0.2 cents was added to people's electric bill through SOPEC, our community choice aggregator, and it generates approximately $100,000 a year. But also part of that conversation when I've been presenting is talking about what's called the Inflation Reduction Act coming down from the federal government, which has a lot of opportunity for citizens to take advantage of tax credits for solar, as well as communities taking advantage of tax credits for solar. So I share that as just a general comment and applaud you for taking the time and energy to go through and make amendments and suggested changes to code when it comes to solar opportunity, because it's something like this that is going to cut through the red tape for our citizens and really open that door for them to go after the IRA tax credits for solar in our communities. So I think this is absolutely fantastic. We are a Soul Smart community also, which that designation comes for being a community that is doing more than people not being a part of it to cut through the red tape for solar in communities, for residential solar, I should state. And I believe that this is really going to be deemed as a real positive through Soul Smart in their efforts to decarbonize our communities. So that is my general comment about this whole process and the work, Dave, that you've put into making this happen.
I would like to make a comment and then also ask a question. So my comment reinforces what the mayor has said. I really truly believe that, you presented part of this at an earlier meeting, and I thought you were doing a great job with that. Looking at this, this one which adds additional information to the code, I think is great, and I'm real excited about this as well. One of the question I have is, would you mind just briefly giving us an overview of the difference between the two code pieces, the accessory versus the land use for renewable energy?
Sure. The primary reason we wanted to break this into two separate sections was if you already have a primary use on a lot or in a zoned area, that zone will be, that use will be what the zone is for. So these accessory structures will allow you to add on to that existing use. What we wanted to look at was what happens when you have a vacant piece of land in certain zones. How do we want to control what kind of development occurs there? So as a good example, we know that our M1 zones are highly sought after, very valuable. We wouldn't want to have a solar array to take up all of our M1 zones. So we wanted to kind of restrict or control where those go. We know that great places to have these primary systems would be vacant landfills, if we had brownfield areas, or places where you can't normally use the property for what it would be. Open space is another great use for these solar arrays, where they can still do what they want to do, have wildflowers, pollinator gardens, and then in addition to that still have these renewable resource systems that'll still work. So in the second part, we were wanting to try to control where they would be allowed to go in our different zones.
So essentially, it's one of the things that'll be accomplished is it allows our community to be more diverse. It gives us, we can have these solar arrays or these renewable energy options, but also have land for other things that might go into an M zone or
Correct,
whatever.
yeah,
It gives us more.
yeah.
It secures our ability to be diverse.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Sir, I think we probably ought to direct our attention as this planning commission, make sure we're all in agreement with. I mean, a lot of this stuff is kind of the mechanics of how we're going to make the thing work that we go in the code. But for us here, to make sure we're all in agreement with this before we pass it, on 230312F. So it's on page 7 of 8. The title of that section is recommended zones, and this is specific for the principal use systems, to where that is the main use. And so those four are really what we're saying right now is the way that we're going to do this. And David and I talked extensively about how we would say this in the code to encourage construction of these, but at the same time not encourage construction in locations that would end up taking away opportunities for economic development in the city. So as David mentioned, F1 is blighted areas, brownfields. Section 2, principally permitted in either open space or EI zones. Right now, the EI zone that exists in the city is the ridges. So what that would mean is that it could be, these could be installed there without any kind of variance required. 3, conditionally permitted in all residential zones. So they can go in residential zones, but there'd have to be a variance.
From the Board of Zoning
From the
Appeals.
Board of
Yes.
Zoning Appeals. And then 4, primary systems would not be permitted in any residential or business zone. Now, that's not to say you can't have solar arrays in business or manufacturing zones, but you'd have to do it not as the primary use of that parcel. So for instance, Walmart could cover their roof with the solar array, or their parking lot with a solar array, so long as there's still a building underneath it that sells stuff, or parking spaces underneath that park. What we wouldn't want to have happen is have a big M area or a big B area that instead of putting new businesses in there, that we just put a big solar array that doesn't produce any jobs and doesn't have any other use of that land. So that's what we thought was the best when we talked about this, but certainly this body, if you've got other thoughts on it, we can make modifications.
Other thoughts or comments?
No. Good job.
John?
I have none.
No, I have none either. I think, again, this is outstanding. I'm glad, Commissioner Stone, that you did clarify that, that if you do have a parking lot, again, using your example of Walmart or Lowe's or something, if they decided they wanted to put a solar canopy there in their parking lot, as long as it's still functioning as a place in which customers can park, great. All right, so since, yes, you can, I apologize.
That's okay. Just clarification. Rob Delac, live on Morris Avenue here in the city, just representing myself. Clarification about the accessory unit accessory option for this within residential zones. It sounds like, is it allowed in any zone? I don't have the document in front of me, so I can't check this myself. Is it allowed in any residential zone, as long as it's BZA approved? Is that correct, just to clarify that?
So as an accessory structure to a residential zone, you can have, we called out 3 different types of renewable energy systems. The one that would be conditional would be wind-powered, wind-generated electric generation. That would be conditional use in residential. The other ones would be allowed in a residential area, but would be geothermal and solar arrays.
And those
either ground-mounted or mounted on the structure.
And those last 2 would be allowed without a variance?
Correct.
And even in R1 zone?
Correct, yeah.
Sounds good.
As long as they meet other code requirements.
Setbacks
All the other
and-
code requirements.
All right, setbacks and height and things like
Yep,
that.
right.
Mhm. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from people attending today? All right, thank you, Rob.
Are we having another meeting on this? All right, I asked you about this before, and I'm no longer troubled by it, but I am concerned for people that don't live in subdivisions that don't know where their lot lines are, and if somebody decides they want their pollinator garden to be the main thing and the other to be over to the edge, it would be a problem, I think. So I would go for roof mounted, as you can see from my behavior in 2 places. But if you insist on having them on the ground, I have 2 issues. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore because I'm ready to vote for it anyway. One issue is, in the real world of people and their property issues, you may get too close to the line with that array. And it's especially troublesome on my block, for example, where there is no, they have to start up at a pin by John's house in order to find out where the real lot line is. And it's a bit of a problem. And I go back to Paul Weil's administration and Paul Logue saying, in this city, almost all of the residential lots are too small, and they're not very clearly designated. So I don't know that you can do it, but I'd be suspicious if they come in with a very tall and a very wide system. I mean, not that we don't want them to do it, but it's got to be in the right place. But I'll vote for it as it is right now.
Great.
To that point, Nancy, I think for the viewing public, I think probably the check or the backstop in that particular thing is under 230311 D 2 ground mounted solar, and then number 2 setbacks, that you have to comply with the setbacks of whatever particular zoning district in which you're located. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but setbacks in residential zones have both a side, front, and rear setback.
Correct.
So, and those are one residential zone. So you at least have to get a certain distance already from.
I was imagining, I actually, since I'm a visual learner, I made my own, that's where it would be, the setbacks have to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And the zoning board can't give a variance, can they?
They could, yes.
To the setbacks?
Yes.
Eek.
But there's a public process, though.
Such as it is.
For notice.
Public being what
Such as it is.
Public being what it is, okay. I mean, how many people know?
One more question is about permitting. I think this would go under the normal permitting process because it's a construction And so there'd be a permit that would have to then be reviewed to make sure the setbacks were okay, and that process is still in place with these, is that right?
Yeah, actually, this actually solidifies that process. So the way we've got it written is that there will be a permitting, a permit required. We'll create that, and then before you could put it in, if this is an accessory structure on a site, you'd have to get a permit first, yes.
And I think that helps alleviate Member Bain's concerns there.
In the
It's
real
being
world,
reviewed,
I'm
so-
still concerned, Rob, but that's okay. It's people being people.
Okay.
So what do we move to
Any
adopt?
other conversation about this particular case? I will need a motion to
So moved,
adopt case 22-05.
And forward it to city council?
of course.
Is that- is that-
Correct.
Okay, yeah. I second that.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Wonderful. Director Riggs, your case is moving forward on to city council.
Thank you.
For-
Communications, we have a Title 21 lot split, 3640 and 3648 Pleasant Hill Road. Director Riggs, do you want to
Thank you, Mayor
speak to
and
this?
members of Planning Commission. This is just a simple lot split to create a front lot and a back lot on Pleasant Hill Road. The reason we're looking at it is because it's within the 3-mile radius of our court boundaries, but it's just barely. It's right at 3 miles. When I first looked at it, I didn't even think it was in our boundary, but it's because it is, we do have to look at this. This would normally be just a minor lot split that would be taken care of by staff in-house, but because they are proposing to have a lot that doesn't have road frontage, it has instead an access easement, a 30-foot wide access easement onto Pleasant Hill Road. Our code says that this needs to be a major subdivision. Our staff's recommendation would be to still consider this a minor subdivision, but go through the approval process for the major subdivision. And this would be not following all the requirements that we have for our major subdivision plans and plats.
Questions or comments from the commission, or would anyone here today like to speak to this any further? No? Okay.
The only structure on here at this point in time is the garage that's shown on the front parcel.
No, that's not correct. There's, on the front parcel, there's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath residence. And then on the back parcel, there is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath cabin. And of course, the garage that you see,
And they're all owned by.
they're all owned by me, yes.
If I may, sir.
Just a minute.
Sure. So the code director and I spoke about this particular issue, and our regulations are in place as a protection against an area that's in the periphery of the city that could potentially be annexed someday, that could get developed without following major subdivision regulations, and then it gets annexed, and there's a bunch of infrastructure that is not to the standard that the citizens of Athens would expect to have to publicly maintain. This situation is not like that at all, but because the code has to say something, it triggers a major subdivision when an easement is necessary to access a public road. So I would agree with Code Director Riggs' recommendation that this body pass basically approval of this and in treating it as a minor subdivision and allow it to proceed as follows. Without all the requirements that our code says you have to submit with a major subdivision.
Okay, comments? Okay, it is a communication, so we will not be voting on this today. We'll bring this up in 2 weeks at the next planning commission meeting. Okay. Wonderful. All right. Okay, reports from the Director of Development and Code Enforcement.
Thanks. I do have one thing I'd like to discuss, and I'm going to pass this out. This is another subdivision request or proposal for University Estates.
You probably know it already, huh?
We have a property owner that owns 3 lots in University Estates Boulevards on the south side. He would like to avoid doing a major subdivision, and as you see here, if he has the 10 lots split off, that would of course kick in the major subdivision. It's possible to do lots number 1, 2, 3, and 4, leaving a remainder parcel of the existing lot 80, and that lot 80 is what you see highlighted or that I have in green. You could do a minor lot split for these 4 lots with a remainder without going to City Council and Planning Commission, except that they don't meet the length to width ratio as required by our code. This is these lots on the proposed lots on existing lot 80 are a R3 zone, so single-family residential could go on there. However, lots 81 and 82 are a B3 zone and would require rezoning in order for those future lots to be split and sold as residential, single-family residential lots. Because of that, and because of the 3-to-1, they don't meet the 3-to-1 requirements, it might be better for the property owner to go as a major subdivision with this, but I just wanted to show this to you and see if you had any comments on it.
Commissioner Stone?
Question, based upon the proposal by the property owner to basically not do the whole thing in order to, scoot in under the minor lot split provisions to allow it to be handled administratively. If it is an R3 zone, could you conceivably put triplexes and quadplexes on those lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4 as shown here?
Yes,
you
absolutely could.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could put some real substantial, multifamily, if you could figure out how to fit them, structures on those individual lots, if it wasn't rezoned.
Is well, clearly, so on the south side of the boulevard, do you have any sense, Director Riggs, as to what the topography is?
There are buildable spaces on all the 4 lots that we're looking at, probably buildable spaces on all 10 of them. Because these lots are so large, it should be, you should be able to get a building footprint that you could put a single-family residential house on any of these proposed lots. Although it does drop off pretty quickly in the back of some of the lots.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I would have would be, it looks like maybe proposed lots 7, 8, and maybe 9. Those are going to be low, and we'd have to check to see if if you'd be able to gravity feed sanitary sewer to the existing sewer system in University Estates Boulevard.
A couple for the commission's knowledge. There's a couple places like that at University Estates right now where basically the house lots sit lower than the street or the sanitary flow line of the cul-de-sac, and each house has to have a grinder pump go in, which isn't the end of the world. It's just something that is necessary to do, and sometimes people don't understand that when they buy a lot and they say, well, wait a minute, I bought this lot thinking I had sewer service. Well, you do. You just have to put a pump.
Just have to get it there.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is not coming to us as a communication or anything, but just informational.
Just information.
I really appreciate that. Director
Hey,
Riggs.
David? Sorry, Mayor. Is it recommended, is it a good idea, just from the human point of view, of having 4 and 5 with splits on 2 sides of the road, since they're not probably going to quit
It's not a road, that's a gas line.
Gas line? Okay, well, good. That solved my problem because I was thinking, oh my God, it's University Estates, it's gotta be good.
Yeah, that's actually a high-pressure gas transmission line, so it's pretty big and has several hundred pounds of pressure on it.
So, to me, it begs the question, because I know the challenges that we have with the property that we acquired at the end of Kenny Drive, which also has a high-pressure line that runs through it with Lot 4. Either you're gonna build up against the boulevard, or you're gonna build down below, but you can't build over it,
But
which,
maybe
is there enough
split it.
room? I mean, that's kind of a interesting,
Yeah, and 5 and 6.
Configuration.
5 and 6, 6 in particular, you've gotta be down below, right?
right.
Probably, I mean, I don't know what it looks like exactly.
So there's a wider issue with University Estates in the back phases. So the portions that were not subdivided in the earlier iterations, so the remainder of phase 2, all of phases 3 and 4 have zoning right now that are applied to lots that aren't necessarily the zoning that we think probably would occur there. They were zoning that were that were assigned based upon a potential subdivision, that it was planned, and then it never happened once the University State stopped. And so, there are several lots up there that have multiple zones on the same lot. And it's something we're gonna have to grapple with as a commission. It'll take the property owner to make a request. It's not something we're gonna just do. But it's something we're gonna have to deal with in the coming years, is how to rezone in that area.
Are they all owned by the same person?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, but there are several of them that are, and they have 3 different zones, an R3, an R1, a B1, all on the same parcel, because the parcel was never subdivided, but it had to have some kind of zoning when it was annexed. And so it was annexed prior to the
was there, I
subdivision being
remember.
implemented, and so the zones are assigned, and you can see it up on the map, the zoning map here over my left shoulder. We could look at it later.
Okay.
Very good.
That's all I have, Mayor.
That's it? All right. And the city planner is not with us right now. The city planner is still working and doing things for the city. We are currently having discussions over the whether or not we really need to take a closer look at the 4 wards for the city of Athens, with the biennial census now coming out, and the fact that we've grown by 17 people, and yet during that time, Director Stone and I were just talking about this earlier today or yesterday, that, during the last biennial period, was there much annexation that took place? And we were kind of hard pressed to identify any annexation that would have, truly affected the wards. And so I know that the city planner has indicated that in the past, there has not been a need to do any redrawing of the boundaries for the 4 wards. So more to follow on where we go with that. Of course, it takes council action to adopt any changes to the ward map for the city of Athens. So we're in communication with President of City Council as well. Any other announcements or business from this body, other than we will be meeting again October 20th? And again, we will be bringing up the communication from today, the lot split, during the next meeting of this body. If there's no other announcements, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. This body is adjourned.